Good afternoon, baseball fans. It is Monday, January 22nd, and this is a fun bonus episode of Bourbon and Baseball. I know that all of you fun people listened to the last episode yesterday. Again, all of the bonus content. I am Suzy. That is Kelsey. This is Bourbon and Baseball, and we have a very special, special guest today, Jessica Kleinschmidt. How are you, Jess?
I'm good. It's a lot of specials, and I'm terrified. I'm just going to let everybody down. But thank you.
No
pressure. I hope you brought the special.
We needed to hype you up. Because you are amazing. You host your own podcast show, Awful Announcing, short and to the point. I love that. The double entendre there.
Yes.
Chef's kiss.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Oakland A's reporter, broadcaster, pre and post game shows. Like, you're just doing all of the things, Jess. Like, what? I'm so amazed by you. That is,
I'm amazed by myself. I'm so glad the term Delulu is like trending because I feel like I am just Deluluing my way through life right now. But no, I'm really lucky. And I was actually talking to somebody recently. I want to be like a 5-tool player where I do everything in sports media. And so far I'm checking off all the boxes. So I'm very, very blessed.
I love that. That's a really good way to put it in sports perspective for our listeners.
So now, how long have you worked for the Oakland Athletics?
I guess I've been associated with the A's. This is my 6th season now heading in. I actually just finally finalized my contract for the 2024 season just days ago. So I'm very excited to get started on this season. Before I was with the actual Oakland A's themselves, I was with NBC Sports Bay Area. So I was kind of their pseudo A's beat reporter, but I was also covering all the sports in the Bay Area. So Niners, Giants, Sharks, Kings, Raiders at the time. I was doing a little bit of everything with them. Kings, did I mention the Kings as well. And so it was just all the things. I'd sometimes be at an A's game being a beat reporter, but like writing a George Kittle article on the side. So I was very much prepping for what I'm doing now, just doing a little bit of everything. And so I'm entering 6th season with the A's overall, but I think this is my 3rd season with just being under the A's umbrella.
Gotcha. That's so much fun. So both Kelsey and I are strictly baseball girls.
Okay.
And so when you were listing off all those teams in my head, I'm all, I think that's basketball. I think that's football.
Totally.
Maybe that's hockey. I don't
Sharks
even know.
Is hockey. I found that out recently. Sharks is hockey. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, I know that George Kittle is a football player. I'm very proud of myself.
Maybe that's all you need to know. You can cover the Niners now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I was texting my best friend about this. Oh, before I go on, I'm so sorry I didn't give the listeners the rated R warning. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry about that. This is a rated R podcast for all of the adult content, not that adult content, the adult language rated R content. Lots of 4-letter words, probably some inappropriate adult humor. I will try and, back it off just a little bit because we have a very special guest, but odds are it's just going to come out, guys, because that's just who I am as a person. So if there are littles in the room, maybe put some earmuffs on them. If not, no judgment here. That's not what we do here, but that's not your jam. You've been forewarned. So there it is. So I was texting my best friend about football and how, had anybody shown me Nick Bosa earlier, I may have been a football girly much sooner in life.
The girls love them some Bosa. Yeah.
Spamming me with Nick Bosa content.
And so I was texting her about Nick Bosa, and I said something about, I'm like, yeah, Nick Bosa from the Giants. And she goes, what did you just say? And I was like, Nick Bosa from the Giants, like the San Francisco Giants. And she goes, what are you doing? You just reverted back to baseball without even knowing that you reverted back to baseball. And I was so mad because I do actually know that, San Francisco, it's the 49ers. That is the football team. And in no world am I thinking it's the New York Giants. Like, I know that that's not, he's not playing for them.
Totally.
But it automatically reverted back to baseball, even though I was trying to talk about football.
It happens in the off season too. Like in the off season, like especially during, hot stove time, winter meetings, people go off about DeVito for the Giants. I'm like, who the heck is that? Is he going to help their bullpen? But they're talking about the New York Giants. So it's like, I get it. It happens to me all the time. Like, you're not allowed to just write Giants from the months of October to spring training. Just say NYSF. It's not difficult to put that in the hashtag.
Yeah. And so she's like, you are a mess. And I don't even know what to do with you, Suzy. Like, and I was like, sorry, baseball over everything.
It happens to me all the time. I get Marlins and Mariners confused. It's like, it's a thing. Don't worry.
Yeah. But, you know, again, had my husband shown me Nick Bosa, we probably would have been watching many more football games. Many more. So, so now I read an article about you and your career and how basically you had wanted to work with the Oakland Athletics since you were a young girl. Is this the type of work that you had imagined yourself wanting to do, or like Kelsey, were you wanting to be like the first female umpire? Like, in what role were you wanting?
A lot of different phases. Did you always, have a one-track mind, or?
I actually wanted to be the first female baseball player. I played baseball growing up. So I didn't know softball existed. I thought girls had to play baseball and just like kind of suck it up. So I actually played baseball until I was a sophomore in high school. Then I switched to softball for collegiate opportunities, which ultimately didn't work out because I dropped out of college, but that's neither here nor there. But when I was 12, it's fine. When I was like 12, 11-ish, my dad got tickets. I'm from Reno. So we're living in Reno, and he got like free tickets. And this was back in the early days of the A's, where it was just the tickets were so cheap. You would spend $14 and you were in the dugout. And there was a special on a Wednesday, and I think it was like $2 seats. And we get there, and those particular seats had sold out, but they honored our tickets to get like box seats. So the moment I sat down, this gives me chills every time I talk about it. The moment I sat down, I noticed the third baseman, he hit a home run. And I saw he was number 3. I'm like, who is that? And because that week I switched from first to third base. And that, when you're 11, is like, you're basically moving out of your parents' house into a new apartment. It's like a totally different position, because all the guys that I played with got taller and I stayed the same size. I'm still the same size I was when I was 12 in certain aspects. But when I luckily found out I had an arm, so I switched to third base. The third baseman for the Oakland A's ended up being Eric Chavez. And I looked in this, I had this program that fell on the ground, which somebody had to purchase and they dropped. And I remember I wiped the peanut shells off of it, and I opened it up, and it turns out Eric Chavez and I shared a birthday several years apart. And then I also saw the center fielder resided in Reno, Nevada. And you know who that center fielder was my now manager, Mark Kotze. Yeah. So, and so I went home. We were driving home that day, and I just looked over at my dad, and I was just so embarrassed to admit to him that I like fell in love with this team, because I saw Bobby Crosby, who had like the socks up vibe, which I did when I played. And that's like unheard of now. And I talked to Bobby Crosby. He's now the A's first base coach. I told him about this. I'm like, I mirrored my shortstop playing ability after you. And then they had Mark Ellis, who was like this quiet second baseman. And he reminded me of this baseball player that I played with back in Reno. And I remember telling my dad, like, I kind of want to like watch this team. And he's like, cool. And then we were sitting on the couch. I was sitting on the couch, and he was sitting in his chair. My dad was. And I changed the channel because the A's game was on. He's like, why'd you change the channel? I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of like embarrassed. And he's like, why are you embarrassed? I was like, I don't know, but I told you earlier, I want to be like the A's reporter for this team. Like, is that a thing? And he's like, fuck yeah, it's a thing. Like, let's go. And it was so cool to have a male figure in my life who just supported me from the beginning. And he knew that I was the only girl playing, and he was my coach. He was like the team dad and everything. So he was just used to me being the only girl. And he just knew that was going to help me in the long run. Because to this day, I'm still like the only girl on the A's broadcast. I'm the only girl in a lot of rooms. There's times I'm the only woman in the clubhouse. Like, that's just how it is. And so as time goes on, it's such a norm to me. But I told my dad I'm going to be an A's reporter one day. And he's like, how do we do it? And so, I mean, you fast forward a few years and I'm doing it. But I will say it's definitely different than what I anticipated, because when I watched TV and saw the girls doing the sideline stuff, I didn't know that there was more to it than that. And of course, the job has changed over the years. Like, social media didn't really exist back then. So for me, it's like radio, you can turn that into a podcast, you can turn that into digital. And so digital is what really changed my life, because I created this content on social media, on Twitter, and got kind of discovered that way. And so I'm able to take what I learned from creating content and create content on bunch of different avenues. And that's kind of how this role was born. So I'm so lucky with all of that.
I love that. I love that so much. Like, I got chills from that. I never knew that you were from Reno.
And I got to tell Eric Chavez that story. I got to tell Eric Chavez that story last year because we inducted him into the A's Hall of Fame. And it was another chill story because we had the scrum available because obviously he's like an Oakland legend. And so all the reporters got to talk to him. And I chickened out. And my job is to talk to these guys. And I don't get scared talking to anybody. But for him, I was like, that'd be kind of weird. So I was like, whatever. But I'll like go down to the field for a ceremony and take photos. As I'm walking out of the tunnel, he's just standing there by himself in like street clothes. And I was like, Jess, you have to go talk to him. So I walk up to him and I introduce myself. And I was like, hey, you're one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm the A's team reporter. And he stopped what he was doing. He looked at me. He goes, tell me about that. And so I got to tell him the story. And I remember I had rehearsed telling him in my head for a decade. Like, I need to tell him this story. And I finally got to. And he was like, thank you so much for telling me that. And my father has passed since then, but I got to tell my little brother that story. And my brother was with me at that game. And the next game that he got to go to was when his big sister was one of the, the A's team reporter. I got to give him tickets and put him on the field. He's like, yeah, that was the last game I went to. And I got to tell my brother the story by Eric Chavez. So all these cool moments. And, Mark Kotze is my manager and he's just a phenomenal human being. So just a lot of cool things, like very much a full circle moment. And like, God told me I was supposed to be here type of thing. My light just
I got more chills.
Yeah, same, babe. Same.
Love that. Love that so much. So now when you say that you made all of the content, found kind of like your calling on Twitter and stuff, is that when you like dropped out of college? Like what was the path that you took from saying I want to be the A's reporter to like now? What's that roadmap look like?
I was just like a really bad student and I hated going to class. and I was paying my own way through school. So I was like, I'm wasting so much money right now. And I remember I worked for the federal government for like 8 years, the Bureau of Land Management. And I was like, I like this job. I don't love my job. But I just remember like constantly the universe and God were always telling me like, this is not it, babe. Like, this is not it. And I was like, why would I like tell my 11-year-old self, like, no, we didn't do that. We didn't do it. But I just was at my government job one day and I went into my boss's office and she was like a mom to me. And I was like, I can't like do this anymore. I'm going to move to Oakland and I'm just going to start this crazy career. And same thing. She reminded me of my dad. She was like, okay, like we kind of figured this day would happen. And she tried to get me to stay. She's like, we'll pay for your schooling, whatever you want to do. And I was like, I don't like school. Like I would be wasting money if you sent me to school. And she understood. And to this day, we're still really close. And everybody at my job was like, we knew you were going to do this. Cause I was like blogging on the side and like doing stuff all for free. But I just knew like I had to go like introduce myself like to the Bay Area. It was a whole thing. And so I think 2 weeks later, I moved to the Bay Area. One of my best friends took me in. We're still close to this day. And so I lived with her for a little bit, doing odd jobs, blogging. And that's kind of where this all started. But it was just kind of like a fuck it mentality, like I'm just going to go do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but there's something special about me that I have this talent that like I've never seen on TV or I've never seen online. So I just was pushing out a bunch of content. Nobody was reading it until finally the right person read it, the right person watched it. And all of these opportunities kind of came to fruition.
Yeah, I think it's cool to call out and talk to you about it because especially this day and age, there are a lot of industries where it's just less conventional in terms of like, you get a degree, it gets you this. It isn't necessarily like a means to an end. And how empowering is it to hear that, if you don't feel like that is your path, especially if you are paying your own way. Cause I was in exactly the same situation where I felt like, I'm not sure what I should be doing, but maybe this isn't it. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, the thing to do. But is there, I guess, people are looking at you and wanting to do what you do and thinking like, okay, well then how do I do this, get this? How did you even know where to start?
I didn't. I told you the Delulu thing. And here's the thing, like I am constantly asked to talk to college students in like college classes. And I feel like it's kind of hypocritical and where I didn't like school wasn't my thing. And there was this young girl and it broke my heart. She was like, I told my mom I didn't want to go to college because you didn't go to college. I'm like, baby, no. That doesn't mean like that's your, like you have to follow my situation. Because she was a really good student and she liked school. It wasn't for me. And so I just told her like, this was my path and that's what I chose to do. And it's everything in life. It's not just a career, it's a relationship, it's friendships. Like my path is going to be different from everybody else's. Like I can handle it. Like if people want to throw stuff at me, I can handle it. That doesn't mean everybody else can. So for me, it was just like, well, I know everybody else is doing it a certain way. And I know you're saying like people would go to college and that would help them, but I saw a lot of college kids weren't getting their foot in the door either. So I was like, what's the point of going through all of that if I can just introduce myself to the right people? And I also knew that like I just saw the game differently and I asked the right questions too. And I just started getting followed on Twitter by a lot of like big name people. And I would just be like, hey, can I pick your brain? So I would cold email a lot of people. People are constantly cold emailing me and I'll go on the phone with you and talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. But for me, it was just like, I'm curious. And then if I wanted to write a story on it, why not slide into somebody's DMs who coached that guy and be like, hey, can I pick your brain about so-and-so? I'm writing a profile on him. I'm writing a feature on him and then go from there. And for me, it was also able to translate a written article into a podcast, into going on a radio appearance, having TV introduced to me, that was a whole Delulu thing too. I thought I was going to be amazing at it and I freaking hated it. And now I'm better at it. But at the beginning, I was like, I thought I was just going to go on TV and like be good. Like it was a disaster in the first couple of times, but now I love it and I'm good at it, you know? And so it was just kind of one of those things where I know I'm going to fail a bunch of times, but think about a baseball player. If you hit the ball 1 out of 3 times, like you're one of the best hitters in the league. So it's like, and Tony Kemp told me that they're playing the game at the game of failure at the highest level of professionalism. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like you guys just go out there and fail a majority of the time. And like, you're considered one of the best. If you really think about it, you know, it's really hard. Yeah. It's so different from any other sport in that regard. And the fact that they have to do it as long and throughout the season is a whole thing. So it was just trusting myself, trusting the process. I knew I was going to make it. Like, and I, like I said, it was delusion, but also like I can back that up with my talent. And I also am very charismatic when I talk to people and I have a good way of like having them open up to me. I'm very curious. And the guys that I cover, they know that. And I have to be an extension of them when I go on the broadcast and I say, hey, I have to talk about this pitch you're working on. Can you explain it to me a little bit better? Because I was very confused when you said X, Y, and Z. And they know that I'm trying to make them look good or get the right wording across. And having a baseball background myself, not to the extent that they did, but I've definitely played baseball a lot longer than a lot of the guys I share a press box with. Mm-hmm. So that's no different from that regard either. So when I get the trolls and they're like, oh, you didn't even play baseball. It's like, I played baseball longer than a lot of the guys that I share a press box with, not a broadcast booth with, but a press box certainly. So it's certainly from that regard. And yeah, but I have the resources to go in the clubhouse and ask that person like, hey, what did you mean by this? I saw this in your stance. Like you're getting a little bit different from that. And like, even just we're prepping for spring training. We had A's Cast and we had, you know, Ryan Noda on, Zach Geloff and Nick Allen, and they're working on some things. And I'm so excited to dig into what they were working on in the off season to see how they can be successful in 2024. And that's part of it. I love talking about the numbers because people are obsessed with numbers, and rightfully so. You want to be able to depend on that. You want to have proof, but I want to dig even deeper in that with the stuff that you can't find on a Baseball Reference page.
You're hitting on there's so many golden nuggets and everything that you just said. I think there is so much to being curious that we miss out on or take for granted these days, and to recognize that as a unique skill that you have. And also, we were talking about this before we started recording, like just embracing the things that you know are your strengths. And I think that's actually only become more difficult to do in the age of social media and all of this content creation, because, you know, my husband teaches young kids and he will come home and tell me like, I try to teach these kids to play the guitar today, and they all got so discouraged because I showed them some YouTube video of someone, you know, playing some amazing guitar piece, and they're like, I could never do that. So, I mean, how awesome to hear that straight from you, to just say like, I saw this in myself, I really felt it, and I just went for it. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to figure it out. I love to hear that.
Yeah. And I wish I was the girl on my Instagram page. Like that girl has her shit together, but it's just a highlight reel. Right. And so same thing. Like I like lost followers today. And I was like, I remember like 5 years ago, that would have really pissed me off. But today I'm just like, they're missing out. It's fine. Like, it's just one of those things, you know, like social media has such a grab on us. And I know that's why I'm hired a lot, because I do have a strong following, but I know that's not everything. And it's not who I am 100% of the time. But if you are going to follow me on social media, I hope you know that who I am on social is pretty much who I am. Instagram, I'm going to blur out my pimples. That's just how I am. And I don't feel bad about that. But at the same time, like if you see me tweeting and I tweet a certain way, that's exactly who I'm going to be when you meet me in person.
Yeah. I love the fact that you said that when you first started doing like TV, you were not about it. One of our sideline reporter, the Julia Morales, did a broadcast journalism, like sideline reporting workshop. And I was like, let me try that. Let me see what that's like. And in my big girl job, I'm a photographer, and I used to teach photography for like big conventions and workshops and like that. And I've never had an issue talking to people, teaching people about things. When I tell you the sheer deer in the headlights, the camera was on, the light was on, and I turned into a blubbering idiot. I mean, more so
I didn't know how to spell
am.
MLB. Yeah, it's a hot mess.
Yeah. I to this day, like I still will not show my husband the highlight reel, like of what we actually recorded. And he's like, it can't be that bad, Suzy. It is. It's absolutely that bad. I talked about my favorite baseball player. Chas McCormick will never see this ever. Like I can't.
He's my favorite Astros player, by the way. He's amazing. But I almost guarantee it's probably not going to be as bad as you think.
No, it is.
Suzy?
It really is.
Suzy?
I'm thinking this is like when you get, so I'm a theater actor, and it's like when you get headshots, and every time, it has never failed, I get the headshots and I'm like so excited to see them, and I sit and go through them, and for like 2 hours I just like cry, and I'm like, I look like this.
I know. And you know what? That's true, right? Like we're our own worst critics, but then if you go back later, they're not so bad. Like, and I've listened to broadcasts where I'm like, that was the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And like, somehow it'll end up on the internet, or like the A's will tweet it out to like repurpose it. And I'm like, it's not that bad.
No, that wasn't horrible. I love that.
But you know what? You know what's cool is we will never meet anybody who is worse on us than we are on ourselves. And if you saw my mentions, you would 100% agree. But there's people that have told me things in my mentions. I'm like, you can't hurt me. I said those things with way more F-bombs about me like 2 days ago in the mirror. Like, we're good. So it's like that too. Like, how many times have we been better because we failed? And it's always from that. So Suzy, you're like, oh, that was terrible. But I bet if you did it 47 more times.
And that's
maybe
these are all things that the game of baseball.
Suzy, you are so fucking stubborn, dude. Like, I cannot. I cannot.
Well, ma'am, I mean, again, I was raised with an Asian mom, so really and truly, like, nothing can hurt me. So I always tell my husband that I'm like, look, I'm just trying to give our daughters just enough emotional trauma that they'll be funny, but not enough.
Oh, totally.
To need therapy for the rest of their life. Okay,
totally.
Like that's
also, I'm sorry I keep looking at my phone. I think I might have to break news sometime today, but that's just,
you can break it right here.
I know.
Yeah, I kind of always wanted to do that. I had Robert Murray on my podcast, and he almost broke news. I was like, we should like elongate this podcast just so I can have like the Adam Schefter effect. But no, I don't want to be rude. It's just in case.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah. If at any point in time you need to do that, you're like, okay, bye, and then just log off, and we'll be okay. Like, that is 1,000% all right. So now tell me who is your favorite press? No, not press. Tell me who your favorite color commentator is, and why is it Dallas Braden? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's actually Melanie Newman. Dallas is fine. But no, Dallas is just one of my favorite human beings. I've actually never told this story. I'm glad I get to tell it now. So my mom passed away of cancer last May. And if it wasn't for Dallas, I don't know if I would have been okay. he dealt with something similar with his mother. And I've worked with Dallas, gosh, for 6 seasons now. And he went from just being a colleague to a friend to now he's just my brother. And I remember when I found out my mom was dying, when I found out she was terminal, the A's were in Baltimore, and I don't travel with the team, but I was texting Melanie. I was like, I need Dallas right now. So Melanie, beautiful human being, she ran to the visiting TV side and held the phone up to Dallas, and Dallas immediately called me. And I was just in shambles. And Dallas basically said, you have to stick. Because I was just like, if both of my parents are gone, what am I, like, what's the point, and not like in a dark way, but in a way where I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed if I have the 2 most important people in my life gone. And Dallas is like, I need you here. And Melanie needs you here. And so if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I would be right now. And Dontrell Willis once told me the A's saved his life. And coming back from leave after my mom passed away, like I needed to get back. And it was to see Dallas. It was to see the A's. And Tony Kemp was a huge support system, and his wife, Michelle, too. So Dallas is more to me. So when people talk about Dallas, like, you know how Dallas is. Like, he's chill, he's fun. He will smoke weed on a podcast. That's who he is. But
Yeah.
But I know Dallas as the support system. And when Megan, his wife, brings in his 3 girls, Dallas is a puddle of maple syrup. And he's just the best girl dad, the best friend you could ever have. Also, above or below all of that, he's a phenomenal broadcaster. And he taught me to just be myself too. Like, I feel like when you first get in the industry, you want to be the next Sarah Spain, the next Michelle Beadle. And then I just remember waking up one day, wanting to be the first Jess Kleinschmidt. And it's the Dallas Bradens of the world, the Stuart Scotts of the world, to remind you, like, being yourself will get you far in life. So Dallas Braden is definitely one of my favorite broadcasters, but Melanie Newman is just like the love of my life and my sister. So I guess they're like tied. And it's because of that story, because of him. He's just the best.
It's just a chill fest in here. Like, you would think that it is below freezing because I have.
I know, but I want people. I know it's Dallas, but like he's a softie, and I want people to know that.
Yeah. I love Dallas. Dallas was actually one of the first guests that we had on the show when we were first starting out, and I've been doing the show for a little over a year now, and I think it was like 3 months in. And so and my then co-host Shelby actually reached out to him and set it all up, and then he came on, and I think we talked for like an hour and a half, and I didn't even realize it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That wasn't even professional. Like, that's not even a thing that I'm so, and he's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, we're fine.
He's
and then,
the best.
Like, we got off the thing, and both Shelby and I just looked at each other, and well, we just talked to Dallas Braden for like an hour and a half about it. And we didn't even talk about any of the things that we wanted to talk about. We just talked about all of the other things because it was such a natural conversation.
And he has this innate ability to remind you that like baseball is bigger than baseball. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing that I learned from him as well, is you put the numbers aside, talk about the guy beneath the heartbeat under the uniform. And he played with so much emotion. Obviously, we all know The Perfect Game, Mother's Day. And it's just, he kind of made you romantic about baseball again, no pun intended. But I also think that if it wasn't for the Dallases of the world, a lot of former players wouldn't be as open on their broadcasts as well. And it's like, I feel like you have to tap into that a little bit more, because former players will get on a set and they're like, oh, I've been on TV before, but it's just different. And I feel like he was kind of the beginning of letting the guys show off who they actually are, which is difficult to do when you have a camera in your face, probably less difficult when they don't have like a player contractual agreement anymore. Sure. But it was really cool to see him just be honest. And everybody I've ever met will say that, like Dallas. And now like you have like Jonathan Papelbon being very open, but he's always been that way. So it's just kind of just from that mentality. And I think that that's what I love about him, was because I learned from that as well. Like, I was not my best self on being on TV for the first time because I was trying to be the next X, Y, and Z. And I remember my mother heard me on a broadcast. It was a pregame show for the A's. And she was like, was that you? That didn't sound like you. And part of it was because AJ Puck was injured and I had to be legit about making sure his rehab was correct. And she was like, I understood that, but then you weren't talking about AJ the entire time. Like that didn't sound like you. It sounded like you, but it didn't like sound like you. So it was just when your mommy tells you to like to be you, like you're like, fine, I'll be me. So it was just stuff like that was what I learned from Dallas and stuff.
I was going to ask you, well, I'm sure everyone asks you this actually, so I'm not going to ask you, but I was thinking, a question that you probably get asked a lot was, what are some of your best pieces of advice for people looking to do similar work to you? But you're saying the thing that I think is so incredibly important and easy to say, like just be the best version of yourself. And as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, like I taught fitness forever. And when I started teaching fitness, I remember like watching, a video of myself back and I sounded like the person who trained me.
Yeah.
And we all kind of do that, right? So it's going to happen but I guess what I'm going to ask you instead is what are some of the best ways that you have found to be yourself? Is it the reps? Is it, is there some great class you can take? Like, how do you just get more comfortable at being the best version of you?
It's definitely a deep question. And I had Rich Hollenberg on my podcast, and this guy was one of the first, if not the first, reporter to be on the grounds during the Aaron Hernandez case.
Yes,
and
I watched that episode, and we need to throw it in the show notes because it was awesome.
You did? You loved that?
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Oh my gosh, no. And I remember because he also hosts he also is in part of this community where he's giving back and he's helping young people try to get in the industry as well. And he was telling me about like he's trying to have these young people be themselves. And I asked him, is that easy? Is that teachable? Yeah. And and he said, well, at first he said it was a great question. But which is like, that's like, it's, and I don't think it's teachable, but it's definitely learnable. And I think it has a lot to do with just like, I don't even know. And curiosity is definitely a part of it. I don't mind asking stupid questions because I remember I asked a stupid question to Matt Olson and I got like my ass handed to me on Twitter once. And then it was weird because everybody who was coming at me on Twitter, I take a step back and all of my journalistic friends, all of my reporter friends, all of my newsroom friends were like, thank you for asking that. And it was also about observing the fact that his body language wasn't quite like the team had lost, but he had like a milestone of some sort. And I said, you just hit your whatever RBI. Like, why aren't you seem kind of down? This was via Zoom. So I got to see him from here up, which was where everything was during the pandemic. And he was like, yeah, I'd rather this team win. And it was a great quote. And it was great to see his passion. And everybody was like, why would you ask him that? I'm like, because I got a good answer, And so for me, it's about being curious and my authenticity is I don't know everything. I had Ahmed Fareed on the show, who is like the head of NBC Sports as far as hosting goes. And he's like, it's okay to not know everything. That's why you lean on them. That's why when you were on a panel, and I say this all the time, like, I'm not going to have the same resume as Dallas Braden, as Viv Roberts, as Shooty Babbitt, as Dave Stewart. But I lean on them for that. And I say, well, wait, you said this, but what do you mean by that? And it gets their gears going. And if I observe something on the field that perhaps somebody else didn't see, like that just makes me better at my job because I knew the right question to ask and I knew that the right person to ask too. And I think that's what it is, like showing up and just being curious. And like, it's definitely a thing that you have to just train yourself on because it's deeper than just your career. Right. And I love being different. My biggest fear is being like a Stepford wife, Susie Homemaker, like everybody else. Not saying that I don't want to eventually maybe be a stay-at-home wife or whatever, but I mean like just being like the cookie cutter, like it terrifies me. I love being weird. I love being different. And there's something so beautiful about being unique in yourself. And I think that's what has helped me is because if you want to do the same thing that everybody else is doing, great. But that's not what happens when you have like a meal with me or a cup of coffee with me. Like we're going to have some fun and it's going to be different because I want you to leave an interview with me, whether I'm interviewing you or listening to it, like learning something, but also being entertained. And I feel like it's so hard to find that balance, but that's my main goal as a whatever you want to call me, reporter, journalist, podcast host, whatever. I want you to have a good time, but learn something in the end.
Yeah, finding
Not sure
that
if that answered your
balance.
question.
So chilly in here.
No,
Like
totally,
again, with
because
the chills. Golly.
What I hear you saying is you just have this natural kind of discretion, I guess is what it is about you, where you're like, I'm confident in who I am, what I want to be, what my strengths are, but I also have the humility to know that, I'm going to surround myself with good people, and I don't know everything, and I'm not afraid to fail, because that is such a big part of finding success in anything, and just putting yourself out there to the level at which you have to be successful and to be authentic. So I think
I'm the most confident and insecure person you will ever meet. Period. I will walk the runway. I will walk the runway with Tyra Banks and Gigi Hadid, and then I will go home and cry about it. And not because I'm like, that was so amazing. Like, why did I can't do that. That was dumb. Like that's Jess to a T.
Oh my goodness. No, you would rock that runway, Jess.
I would.
You would
I would.
with the hair, all of it.
Oh yeah. I absolutely would. And then like 2 weeks later, I'd be like, I can't believe I did that. Like, who does that? Like, what is that? And I'd have a whole day where I'm like, you just can't. You just don't talk to me. Like, I don't know what that was. That was so stupid. And like, it's just that's me to a T. Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, and what you're kind of saying, I mean, that's kind of why I started Bourbon and Baseball a year ago before all of this, I only started watching baseball in 2018. So I'm a relatively quote unquote new fan. And when I started listening to baseball podcasts, there were so many baseball podcasts.
Yeah.
Mainly full of old white guys. And I was like, I don't need any more old white guys talking at me. I have one at home, like that talk, like I don't need any more. Okay. So, and I had been trying to find female voices in baseball, and the few that I found, I wanted to stick a rusty spoon in my ear, and I'm like, I can't listen to you any longer. Like, nope. And so I would just keep talking about baseball to my husband, and he goes, for the love of God, can you just talk to anybody else about baseball? Just anybody else.
You're like, fine, I will.
And I was like, well, but what? And he goes, you keep talking about this. Like, why don't you do it? Emma, why would anyone listen to me about baseball? I literally have only been watching baseball at that point.
I say that before every broadcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Why would anybody listen to this? Welcome back to A's Total Access. It's like,
and he's like, why wouldn't? He's like, do you hear yourself? I mean, you're super passionate about it. What? I'm pretty sure that if you did this, you would find other people that would listen to you, Amal. I think you're only saying that because you're married to me and you have to, but whatever. And then we started the podcast, and then random people would start listening, and I'm all, why are you listening to me? But thank you so much for listening. Like, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And a year, and here we are a year later, and we've been able to talk to so many.
What about why was it 2018 that you started following baseball?
Well, in 2017, a little team won the World Series, and I again was not a baseball fan, and my husband had to wake me up game 5, and he was like,
that was one of my favorite. That was my all-time favorite games. I got like a taquito stuck in my hair. It was a whole thing. I loved that game.
Yeah, no, I was not a baseball fan. Did not know anything about baseball. I would have rather watched two flies fuck than watch a baseball game. And literally, I fell asleep during that game, and my husband had to wake me up screaming that Alex Bregman walked it off in the 10th. And I'm all, you said words that individually I know, but then you strung them together in a sentence, and now I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And he was just like, I don't think you understand. I was like, you're correct. I don't. Like, yay, sports ball. Woo! And then,
don't ever say that sentence to me again, Suzy. Gosh.
Yeah. Trust me. So many
and
people.
What about, I'm getting like podcast Jess on you, but what about these podcasts with women what made you want to stick a rusty spoon in your ear?
The fact that they, and this is going to sound totally cocky and I feel very bad, but it basically, I was very judgmental on the way that they spoke and how they spoke, their cadence, and every other single word was like, and I literally, I was like, seriously, do you not listen to yourself? You can't listen to yourself, because if you did, you would not You would not say the things that you're saying, how you're saying them. And it hit me that literally anybody can start a podcast regardless of talent level.
Yeah.
That sounds bad. Or literally anything. And so I had said to myself, well, at the very least, I've got that taken care of. I can at least speak in a way that is pleasing to the ear. You know, and some people would say absolutely not, Suzy. However, you know, for the most part, I have not yet heard somebody say that they would rather stick a rusty spoon in their ear.
Not to your face.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, do not open this up to your Twitter mentions.
Yeah. No, and I get it too. Like I've definitely like fallen in love with my podcast. I have like a graveyard of podcasts. We all do. And I'm so thankful to Awful Announcing because they're letting it make it mine. And I'm trying to branch out and do more like mental health stuff. And like, I'm a single woman, so I want to tap into like dating and all those other things too. And they're great about letting me do that. So it's definitely become like my child, you know, and it's therapeutic for me for sure. But I love people and I love learning about them. And I think that that's something that I'm discovering a lot about myself is I want to know about people, which is definitely something that I've learned, not maybe the last couple of years, but I mean, my entire reporting career. It's you want to know how things, I hate being like, what makes you tick? Like, that's like such a lazy ass question, but you want to know how you can ask that in several different ways. You know what I mean? And
right.
I think people are awesome. And I think everybody has a story. And I know I certainly do. So if I have like all these different things that I've dealt with, like, I wonder why, like what made them stand on this exact area where I'm standing now? Like, why are we both here at this moment? You know?
Yeah. Keeping us interested in each other is important. It's important it's going to be even more important in this world, this continuous, very virtual world that we live in. But I want to say that's something that both of you do that I appreciate from, you know, somebody who started a baseball podcast a year and a half ago, not because I didn't necessarily, see more women covering sports now and all of that. But the main way that I still see them doing it is in a way that is being kind of that host that just volleys it to the man. To whether it's the player or, you know, because sometimes I totally agree that sometimes a player is just able to give a different and better perspective on things, of course, but sometimes it's not even in that case. They're just there to be the Vanna White, I guess, if you will, even if that is in an audio sense. So both of you speak about it in a way that, like, I want to know your opinion about the game. I want to hear your perspective as well as in a way, you know, that you can ask questions because of your perspective on the game and not just because you're pretty and have nice voices to listen to.
Well, and it is nice, like when I'm interviewing somebody and he'll throw it back to me like, well, what do you think about that? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's gonna, like, this isn't about me. But then they literally sometimes will be like, no, I genuinely want to know because you know this X, Y, and Z, and you spoke to this person. And I cannot tell you how good that makes a woman feel. And we find out, like I talk about Danny Wexelman and Melanie Newman constantly. We know who our allies are pretty quickly. Dallas is, of course, one of them. Like Eduardo Perez is a phenomenal ally. There are so many guys who have our backs. And it's great. But it wasn't until recently where I had other like women that had my back. And I have a phenomenal Rolodex of women who I can call in a second, whether it's baseball or life things. And it's just kind of cool to know that, like, same thing. Like if I'm interviewing another woman, like they'll volley it to me too. And that's great. You know what I mean? So it's really cool. And I'm glad that you noticed that because it's definitely, we feel it too, you know?
I love that. So, you know, has the Oakland Athletics always been your favorite team?
Yeah. I grew up an A's fan. I was born in Baltimore, so I have an affinity for the Orioles. So the Kleinschmidt household was so elated when Melanie Newman got the Orioles job. But I also am from Reno, where I covered the Reno Aces, which is the Diamondbacks AAA team. So it was so weird, though, when I returned from leave in 2023. It was the first time the Diamondbacks had been at the Coliseum since I want to say 2017. And so it was the first time that I got to watch my two teams go up against each other. And that was really, really cool. And Luis Gonzalez was there, and I finally got to meet him as my mom's favorite player growing up. So that was a cool moment. And yeah, so I've always kind of had an affinity for the Cardinals and the Diamondbacks and the Orioles.
What would make you think Cardinals? I don't know.
I know.
Well, I want to know, because obviously, especially as of late, covering the A's is maybe a bit different than covering other teams. So what challenges does it present, and how do you adapt content to keep fans engaged when, you're just constantly hearing how not competitive the team is going to be yet again this year?
It's a great question. And I'm glad you asked that, because we kind of all got a lot of stuff. Heading into last season, the term winning wasn't mentioned a lot. It was about opportunity. And it was like the younger guys getting an opportunity, the older veteran presence, they're coming onto the squad because perhaps the A's are giving them a major league deal. But Brent Rooker, who was our A's All-Star last season, who was voted in behind Shohei Ohtani for the designated position, or the designated hitter position, he pulled Nick Allen and Zach Geloff aside, our mid infielders, and said, we can't repeat what we did, losing 112 games. And I think that that's what's important, is we're using the term winning a lot. I'm hearing a lot of that. And there's a little bit extra pressure there, because, these are up and coming players. Zach Geloff is going to be a superstar. The way that he showed up to the major league clubhouse, it felt like he had been there the entire season. He got there in July. And I felt like I was introducing myself to a major league player who had been in the bigs for 2 seasons. And he's such a well-rounded player. He's supposed to be on the left side, but now he's playing second base. And he's one of the top 10, if you're into the media stuff and MLB Network, he's one of the top 10 second baseman in the game. And if you are definitely into it, because the way that we consume media as a society, you're definitely paying attention to that. But he got, 9th out of 10th, and he absolutely should be, because he's a phenomenal defensive player. He's quick on the bases. He's so smart in his approach at the plate, and he's only getting better, and he's still very young. But this is the season for Ryan Noda. Obviously, if you guys follow me on social media, I'm a big Joey Votto fan. And the guy, Ryan Noda, gets on base. And you want to talk about Moneyball, what have you. But watching Noda get better throughout the season was phenomenal. And this is a Rule 5 guy, probably the best Rule 5 draft for the A's since Mark Canha. And that's a big name, big shoes to fill, and a big name to be compared to. And Ryan Noda just got better as the season went on. I want to know what his brain sees when he approaches the plate, because he knows how to not only work the zone, but I think he can see the pitch before it happens 2 pitches ahead of time. And when he knows when the pitch is there, he knows when it's not. And that's just part of it. I think he's going to get better as far as his bat goes. He wants to be more consistent at the plate. And Nick Allen was just talking about him. He's our first baseman, and he can stick it, and he's a big target there. And Nick Allen, I mentioned him. He's working on his hitting. He wants to be better on his bottom half. And Nick Allen's one of the best defensive players that you could really watch. He's got amazing hands. And that actually kind of hindered him in his approach at the plate, because he was too handsy. And you forget about the bottom half. And Tristan Casas, who I had on the show last year, of course, plays for the Boston Red Sox, also was compared to Joey Votto. But he said that Nick Allen was one of the best defensive players he's ever played with. And they played together on the Team USA team. That was redundant. But so I just feel like there's so many little nuances that are going to be working for this team. And you have Shea Langoliers, who has yet to peak. And you have JP Sears, who got 32 starts last year. He stayed healthy. I think he's going to start and be a part of a really strong rotation. Joe Boyle and Mason Miller have some of the best upside for the A's since, Jared Parker and Sonny Gray, who was in Cy Young talks last season, former A, who isn't. So it's a lot of really good things to show. So when I have to present that, you just have to go in it knowing that, and it's not, and obviously we know there's the Vegas move that's kind of all over everything. And so people don't really want to pay attention to the players, but my job is to show you that the reason why they're on this major league team is because of X, Y, and Z. And at the end of the day, like they're still superstars in their own right and you want to know about them. And that's my job as well. And I'm also a baseball nut where I want to know like what's working for them, what isn't. How can I make this person relatable to a fan? And the fans themselves want to know about those things. So I just got to trust my gut and trust what I'm showing on the broadcast, when I'm tweeting about, what I'm putting out on, you know, the A's YouTube channel is something that they can still relate to despite everything that's going on, not just with Vegas, but a really coming off of a 112 loss season, a historically bad season. But to know that the guys are not only aware of what happened, not one of them throughout the season was like ignoring the fact that that was going on. But I can promise you, as somebody who was, you know, following the team the entire season, it was still a solid team. And I don't want to say that just to be like, oh, she's Delulu. Like, yes, in other ways, yes, but not when it comes to this team, because despite the really bad season in 2022, the team was hitting, the defensive capabilities got better over time. It was some solid pitching. Obviously, every team's going to deal with, you know, be riddled with injury. And there were so many bright spots. And I mentioned some of them, and I feel like they can only go up from there. Estee Ruiz is going to steal so many bases again. And, you know, more MLB.
I was going to ask you how many bases you thought he was going to steal this season.
We all did like a broadcaster like number. And I want to say, I think I had it up to only 40 or something. And like, boy, was I wrong. But it was cool to see him. Yeah, and Ricky Henderson is always at the field, and they would like talk about things because he broke Ricky Henderson's like rookie record, and he's so fast. And once his defense gets together, he's going to be unstoppable. So there's a lot of good positives to take away, and I'm not just saying that in any sort of naivety way. Like there was so much good, and the best part is no matter what happened throughout the season, the clubhouse was solid. It was always solid, and they get along very well. And it wasn't like oh, F it, we're just going to have fun. They're professionals. You know, Nick Allen's one of the most pro players I've ever come across. And they don't like to lose, period. It doesn't matter what organization you play for, they want to win. And that showed. And like I said, the chemistry is good. They all get along. It's just a fun team to be around. And despite all the losing, having to talk to the media every single day, that's got to be wearing on you. But there's a lot of positives. And I think it's really cool to hear them have a good mentality heading into this next season, because there's just something different there.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, they are Major League Baseball players. And I love hearing you say that like they deserve to be covered and highlighted as so. And it's funny because I don't know, like I've had some of the most interesting conversations with fans or people who cover these teams that everyone's like, oh, how are you a Reds fan? Whatever. But they are like the truest, most diehard fans of the game a lot of the time. And even just, I'm like sitting here getting excited listening to you talk about the way that you cover them and, you know, the kinds of things that you think about, because those are the storylines that we love to follow regardless of what fan you're or what team you are a fan of.
Yeah, and the A's are just, it's like a family vibe too. Like obviously Ron Washington was just hired as the Angels manager, and we have him on A's Cast a lot. He's A's royalty. He fixed Marcus Semien. And now Marcus Semien is not only a World Series champion, but he's getting paid to be. And one of the best guys in the game too. You want to talk about a professional. And he came on A's Cast recently and said, not only talking about how passionate the fans are, and it didn't matter the numerical value of the attendance, like it just felt loud. Ask any outfielder who has ever played at the Coliseum, they will verify this. But Ron said, it's, you know, once you're an A, it's family. And, you know, you walk in there, the workers that I've worked with for years, they don't forget you. And call the Coliseum what you want, but it's one of my favorite places in the world, because you talk to any broadcaster, any player, the moment you're at a ballpark, like everything's good. Everything's good, which is why I rushed back from, you know, being on leave. Because once that 640 hit, the first pitch hit, like mama was good. And I feel like that is just something that I've had from the beginning. Because for me, I was spoiled to the Coliseum when I was 11, and it's pretty much the exact same as it is now. So it's a comfort for me. But I've always had a good time there, whether I'm there as a fan or there as, you know, the team reporter.
Now, did you actually participate in fantasy camp this year?
No, I didn't want to make everybody feel bad. No, I didn't. No, I
Shut up,
didn't.
Siri. No one's talking to you. Sorry.
I did not. I was not there.
That's disappointing, but I would feel bad for Dallas though, because I know that you probably throw harder than he does.
I probably do, but I also feel like they should invite me just to kind of give them like the sideline reporter vibe. Like, hey, that went really, like, let's do a post-game interview. Maybe I'll do that next season.
That's so funny. We were talking about fantasy camp yesterday on the show, and I was saying like I would do unholy things in order to afford going to like Astros fantasy camp, because that would just be hysterical in and of itself, watching non-athletic me trying to be athletic.
I just like, and I feel like I don't know how I'd look in baseball pants anymore. I haven't worn them in a long time. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't, they've got the butt pads now. I think I would just rock the butt pads in the baseball pants, and then I'd be good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just, if anybody ever sees me in baseball pants, just know that it's probably butt pads. That's what you're looking at. Definitely.
That I don't need. That is not a concern for me.
Okay, we get it. We don't need butt pads.
Oh, geez, Kels, we all can't be gorgeous and work out like you, okay?
But
with her very good-looking husband, Kelsey, we get it. Okay.
Yeah. But you know what? Okay, I'm going to tell you one more thing about my husband. He made me a calendar of him in baseball pants, which I asked for. It's very dorky. He's like posing with all my pets, but that is something that I have to brag about. So that's my version of fantasy camp. I don't need anything else.
That's amazing. That's one of the best things I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Huh. I love that.
Anyway,
well,
while we're on the topic of
Jess, I know we've kept you for quite a while now, and so we're gonna wrap up with like one final question, and then we will let you go. If you could pick any player to co-host a show with, who would it be?
Like current player?
Current, doesn't matter.
Retired player, whoever.
Yeah.
You know who I think about a lot who'd be fun to host a show with is Brandon Belt. Brandon Belt, he's very funny, but I think the real, and it's funny though, because it's kind of a good transition. Obviously, Joey Votto, I would love to host a show with him, but he would take all the attention away from me, and I don't like that.
I don't know. I feel like you and Joey Votto have like very similar vibes.
Thank you. That is
actually, I do need to know where you want him to sign before we let you go too. Like if you can.
I will say, a few years ago, I joked with our GM. I'm like, any interest in Joey Votto? Like, what's going on there? And he's like, I know, Jess. He gets on base. It was like a total joke. I don't care. I just don't think any of us are ready to sign. The last I heard, 3 teams were interested in him. I think Toronto would obviously be great. His vibe, I could see him doing well. I mean, why not return to the Reds? Like they just did that with the Cardinals with Matt Carpenter and everybody. Yeah. But at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, I would love him to be on the A's. We had like a point in the A's lives where we had, like Frank Thomas before he retired and Garcia Parra. Like, why not go back to that? Like, probably guarantee. But then you'd have to. Ryan Noda should stay at first base. But Noda's, he loves him some Votto too. I don't care. I just hope he's happy. That's what matters. And then if not, then we can start our podcast.
The Joey and Jess show.
Yes.
I would love
sign me up.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
All right. Well, Jess, tell the people where they can find you on all of the socials.
You can find me on Twitter X. Oh yeah, X at Kleinschmidt JD, and then Instagram Jessica Kleinschmidt. I'm trying to do the TikTok thing. I'm Jess Kleinschmidt on there as well.
Oh, you're ahead of the curve. I am an old lady. I don't do the TikTok, but
I can only scroll TikTok mindlessly and watch all the trends. I can't ever make a TikTok because it would take me 4,000 years to do.
It does.
And so I hired a high schooler to do my photography TikToks, and she made 8 of them in an hour.
Oh my God.
I don't know how she did it, or I was like that. I made one, and I kid you not, it took me a literal 6 hours to do them all. This is not. I can't do this. This is not a thing that I can do. So
also make sure you are liking and subscribing everywhere on all the podcasts to shorten to the point.
For sure. We will link all of those. We will link all of those in the show notes because it's one of those where I started listening because I'm like, ooh, another baseball girly. And then, you know, like you do all of the other sports as well.
Yeah, I'm not
so
hard.
I tune out a little bit more. I tune out a little bit more when it's not baseball related.
I do have my biggest baseball guest coming up in the next few weeks.
Teaser.
Ooh,
but until we record it, I don't want to like jinx it.
So. Yeah,
right. Well, I am on the edge of my seat waiting for that. So
it's going to be really good. Imagine me who like doesn't hold back with a male version of that.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Great.
Whew. Subscribe.
So, you guys are the best. This is a lot of fun.
No, like I said, Jess, anytime you want to come back, feel free. That it is an open invite. And we will just talk.
Maybe I should come on like post game so you guys can see like how I am after a game. Be like, this girl.
That would be really interesting.
And then Suzy will be like, talk about baseball. I'm like, no.
Absolutely not. Done.
No. That's totally okay.
I did want to, if I could, like, next time I do want to pick your brain more about like work-life balance, because that's such an interesting topic with when your work is just such a huge part. You want it to be a big part of your life.
Yeah. Right? And maybe I'm not the right person to ask because I'm single. Like I don't have kids. I don't have a husband. So like,
no, I mean, the fact that you're diving more into like the mental health and just all of that aspect of it, that's all part of it. So
I would love to talk about that because I'm still trying to figure that stuff out myself.
And I do think that that's really cool that you're going to cover more of that in your content as well. So
thank you.
We are here for all of it.
You guys are the best.
You are the best, Jess. I love you so much. So definitely go follow Jess on all the socials. Go listen to and watch, subscribe to Short and to the Point. And then I will obviously link all of the things in the show notes below. Don't forget to give us 5 stars. Give us nice words because we love all the nice words. Hit the subscribe button. Love that. Still holding strong in Korea and Japan, guys. Thank you so much. Spain. Love that. USA though. I need y'all to get on board. Get on board.
We're stubborn. We're stubborn. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So with that, we will close the show out. I'm gonna find my mouse at some point. There we go. And we will hit and record. And yay, baseball!